and I have been running a division survey. How it works is that we send out a battery of questions to my division membership, and then we are going to tabulate those answers, and I'm going to basically present that in my division report to the board in January.
Okay, on behalf of the club. Okay, we're really glad to have you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, and it's good to see our neighbor from Wayne so close and right in front of us here. So, yeah, I guess just in terms of Q&A, I mean, we have not rehearsed this, so maybe obviously, if you can post your questions on chat, and maybe either Rhea and I can sort of be the arbiters, just so that everybody gets squeezed in. And also, Rhea, I guess just hang on, I guess, because this is also sort of a Hudson division meeting as well, too. So any update that we want to do from a division standpoint, let's take a couple of minutes before we throw it open to Q&A
Okay.
and handle that as well. But David, just one question, just from the standpoint of obviously we're all going through all the pandemic and COVID and field day problems and everything else that we've had. But from the standpoint of just looking at, I guess my question is always membership and what we've, what we're able to do, in terms of keeping members engaged in a very, very difficult time. We've been fortunate here at FLARC that we've held our membership numbers year over year, which is great. But I guess, what has the league seen in terms of just, overall input and sort of what's going on in terms of membership and interest? I would assume that there's a lot more, but perhaps you can confirm that.
Sure. Well, membership has grown over the last year, which is good news. It has not grown a lot. It certainly has a lot more room to grow, and I challenge all of us members to get out there and find someone who's not a member and get them engaged. But one of the things that we've done that I think is creative is we've been open-minded about let's call them the rules associated with some of the operating events, such as Field Day back in June, and then the ARRL DX contests coming up, where essentially we're trying to create accommodations. These are not permanent rule changes. Nobody needs to go to Newington and protest because, whatever, they're all excited about it. These are accommodations that are intended to do two things: get more people and increase the fun of participating in these events. And so that's really where our focus has been. Now, in terms of the league itself, I have to tell you, you guys have a lot to be proud of the folks that work here at headquarters, because through a pretty scary time, and you'll appreciate this being in Metro New York, and it certainly extended up into Central Connecticut. The COVID numbers got very bad, very fast, and really, I think to a certain extent, almost became terrifying. The league physically shut down for a week. Diane Middleton, who's our CFO and head of HR, I tease her and tell her she's our COVID czar. She has been absolutely extraordinary in working with management and staff to ensure that we can create an environment where people are able to work in the building safely and to be able to leverage working remotely, since we do have limitations on the number of people that are here in the building. So I think COVID's been very tough on the world, and I think that amateur radio and ARRL have responded well.
Okay. All right. Ed, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, no, just a reminder, just to go back to to the member survey here in the division, is that the link is on your Hudson Division bulletin. Okay, to be able to fill it out. If you don't have it or you've deleted it, I'll take the risk here and I'll send you a personal link. Okay, you can send me an email at wx2r@arrl.net, wx2r@arrl.net, and I'll send you a link to the survey for the Hudson Division. So, Rhea, let me toss it back to you.
All right, I got a question here from K2YRA. The ARRL sponsors a great variety of events throughout the year, though I believe the year-long events such as National Parks in the Air and Grid Chase are very effective in engaging operators long-term. as well as increasing exposure of the hobby to the public despite pandemic restrictions at the current time. I encourage more of these long-term events tied to log to the world. Thank you. Okay, so this is more of a statement, but I will throw in something here with this. You mentioned the engagement of women, and national parks in the air was big because it tied in a lot of different hobbies. People go out and they explore it and stuff like that. I engage in some other hobbies. I fly drones. I'm a certified drone pilot. So I go out places and I shoot pictures with drones and video and stuff like that, and it gets me outside exploring. Do you think that the ARRL will do another type of event like National Parks NEA? Maybe not exactly like it, but what do you think of that kind of idea?
Well, again, I don't want to give everything away.
Yeah, sure. You don't have to.
But what I will tell you is that you'll see in March and April, we are bringing a big spotlight to Cycle 25. We've been talking about this for a number of months, and we've been talking about specific operating events and awards that could be offered during Cycle 25. One of the things that we kicked around was something like a special DXCC for Cycle 25, but it takes 11 years, before you get your certificate. So that didn't work out. But in any event, we've been kicking around a lot of creative ideas. But again, we've got, and you've probably got there in Fairlawn, we've got technicians that have been licensed in the past couple of years that think that the FCC laid a dead band on them with 10 meters. And, it's really terrible. Well, you give this another year or two and 10 meters is going to be on fire, to the point where you get on some of these contests and the phone band is wrecked from 28.3 all the way up to 29. So if you're a technician and you think 10 meters is a dead allocation to you, wait till you see what Cycle 25 does. And it's shown early signs of much bigger life than what was forecast. So now there is a portion of the scientific community that thinks Cycle 25 is going to be huge. So this could be great.
Ed and Nomar, and of course anybody else, don't make this just our show. This is for you to talk direct to the CEO. K2AL asked any discussion of a novice type entry license. Before David answers that, Al from New Providence Amateur Radio Club, I think the real holdup with that is the FCC. But David, you could expand on that.
To the best of my knowledge, the FCC, from an administrative perspective, wanted to reduce the number of licenses. And, there are people that want to come in as a novice. Frankly, I don't know how much easier you can make it. The technician license, there are people that literally cram for the exam in 24 hours. There's no code requirement and they get their call sign. So I don't know that we actually need a novice level. I'll tell you the toughest exam that I took, and I took my novice, general, advanced, and extra. I always thought the advanced exam was far and away the hardest exam. And the advanced licensees that wound up essentially, feeling that they were let down by the FCC and let down by the league and let down by the hobby. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. The only thing that I would encourage someone that feels like that is go get your extra, pick up the book. There's no 20 words per minute. You don't have to worry about that. Just, pick up the book and crush it.
Yeah. So Gordon Beatty, who is a very good technical resource in Northern New Jersey and has always been sending me technical stuff. He has a generic question. If you're around and you want to unmute yourself and talk to David and ask him what you want to ask him.
Sure, David, thank you for doing this. And I'm amazed our paths haven't really crossed, especially since Bob Nauman. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But so I spent a lot of years as a scoutmaster, and I basically, as part of our troops activities, got kids in Skywarn, got them in CERT before brother was a teen cert. Got him on the air to use the handy talkies, to on our hikes because we were a hiking troop. Got them interested in HF, maybe a little bit of satellite here and there, and digital operations, and just general fascination. And what I saw was in that 20 years as Scoutmaster, that kids would pick, a lot of careers that they wouldn't otherwise pick. A lot of them were more steadfast in why they wanted to become engineers and engineering related things. That's no surprise. But it was also very interesting as to how the ones who had either the military or first responder, services, police, fire, EMS, how seriously they took that communications lifeline as an essential tool, just like a law enforcement officer would look at other tools that they have, or a firefighter or an EMS person. They each have a set of primary tools. This was an essential tool, and they knew how to make it work. And you can see that now these guys are 25 and 30 and pushing 40 in some cases. So now in all honesty, there are not many are on the air, but what I do see is that a lot of them are still licensed. Most of them have renewed their licenses. So I think they'll come around to the hobby more and more as they get more time. They're just settling their lives, right? Trying to get, families started, careers started, et cetera. So they're on that ebb side of the opportunity space. So what can we do to, plant that seed and continue to foster that seed across a lifetime, that will then hook them in when the time and opportunity space, maybe their own kids, show up?
Well, one of the things that I've noted is that we tend not to be, we tend to focus the conversation on the lack of youth. In fact, I saw a quote come up that said that people under 40 years old don't even know that amateur radio exists. I don't know that there's any fact to that, as much as it is sort of an opinion or a feeling. But what I will tell you is that the younger folks that come into the hobby are interested in a much different set of aspects of the hobby. So a perfect example is mesh networks. If you look at Fairlawn Amateur Radio Club and you do a field day, do you make any effort to set up a mesh network at your field day, and how do you use it? You have a clubhouse, right? But if you've got a building, have you built a mesh network, and do you have people in the club that are doing that? Because young folks are absolutely interested in that. I remember when, it seems like from a technology perspective, it's the death of ham radio, right? So I remember when the internet came along and people were like, oh my God, it's going to be the death of ham radio. There's a whole new set of capabilities that exist today in amateur radio because of the internet. One of the things that I've challenged our new director of MCOM in thinking about strategically is, we're going to have Starlink up and running pretty soon. So if you take a group of people to a Caribbean island that's just taken a direct hit of a category 4 or 5 hurricane, and there's no buildings left, there's no power, there's no television, there's no radio stations, there's nothing on the island. And a group of hams get there, they set up a mesh network on the island, and then one of those becomes a gateway up to the internet through Starlink. Do we view that as a bad thing, or do we view that as a good thing? Our mission in being first responders and setting up communications doesn't change. But what does change is our ability at much higher bandwidth of communicating what's happening, on the scene, boots on the ground, changes dramatically. But I said to him, You tell me, if you take a group of 24 guys, you're on an island, you're running around the island, setting up this mesh network at a bunch of Red Cross facilities. Do you want to run a 20-meter wind link back to the US with health and welfare messages? Or do you want to have a Starlink, dish that you set up at one of the locations, point it up at the sky, and bang, you've got high-speed internet driving your entire mesh network? Now, if you're a 20-year-old is going to say, well, of course you want to do that. But if you talk to somebody that's been in it for a long time and maybe has an emotional stake in WinLink, they may say, oh my God, that's going to be the death of WinLink. It's like, no, it's not going to be the death of WinLink. It's a very specific application. And are you willing to change your point of view? But the point is that when we, as the generation looking back, for the youth that are behind us, we just need to be a lot more sensitive to the things that they may find interesting don't equate to what we're doing today. And
David, just FYI,
sure.
The club under Randy W2S's guidance has put up several different bands of Arden Mesh on the clubhouse, and
Awesome.
There's a cluster of connected nodes scattered across Fairlawn. We're trying to make use of some of the local mountains to tie that together. And even though I'm in Florida, I'm still managing that effort remotely, which is kind of hilarious. But you hit a nail. You hit a very, very poignant thing. The other thing you can do is you can make a T-hunt out of some old routers that have mesh software on them, and have people go find all the MAC addresses, and then just for good measure, take the GPS hack from where you find the target, and then have to communicate that back over a handy talkie, usually a Biaofeng or a FRS radio or whatever. And that we've done that as part of a transmitter, a multi-site transmitter hunt. And the kids love it because they can use their phones and they can fabricate a dish out of aluminum foil and sticks and rope.
Right. The other thing is I'm in the process of writing a column for NCJ, the National Contest Journal, and it's sort of in the formulation stage. But the three pieces that I want to touch on in this article for NCJ has to do with evolution, revolution, and fair play. And when you look at the world today, most people have a tough time committing 48 hours to a contest. Now, are there diehards that are going to hang in there and do it? Well, of course there are, right? But if we want to get younger people that have very active lives, and Gordon, you were pointing out, people that are trying to raise a family, maybe they've got, babies, whatever it is, they're, how are we going to engage them in a contest? And we need to be able to create new ways of utilizing game theory to say, here's some interesting ways that you can have a contest within a contest that doesn't require 48 hours, but is incredibly competitive. And how do you go about doing that? Now, there's a contester, K9PG. I still don't know whether he's famous or notorious, but he's certainly a little bit of both. But one of the things that Paul has done in the past is he'll go into sweepstakes, and his mission is to work every section exactly once. He does not work any extra contacts, and you can't mess up, right? If you mess up, you've blown the whole thing. But it could be very interesting to create that contest within a contest, see how long it takes somebody to do it. So your score is actually based on time. And if you do mess up, you're not out of the running. Maybe you get penalized 15 minutes or something. But for us to take young folks and get them interested in something like contesting, where maybe they just don't have the time, we've got to be creative. We've got to be engaging and figure out ways to make it relevant for them, as opposed to clinging to these, old definitions and beliefs of what contests are.
All right, so we got to move on. Thank you, Gordon. And somebody asked here, Steve K2YRA asked, Dave said FT8/FT4 is not the death of ham radio. Very hot topic. Interested in more of your perspective on that. Thanks.
Sure. So basically the argument is that because you're not using your brain to decode the messages, that it's not real ham radio. I can tell you that I've operated our station in Bonaire remotely, PJ4, and you'll see if you go back and look, there's PJ4/NA2AA. And I get a lot of requests from Asia to get on from there and work these guys. I went on at 1 o'clock in the morning, pointed the beam at the US, which happens to be the same beam heading for JA. I called CQ on FT8 and my entire screen went red. And somebody criticized me, oh, you should be in Fox and Hound mode. I had no earthly idea that the entire band was going to become full of guys calling. And what's interesting is that if you've worked FT8 and you're trying to work a rare country, or you need a state to finish an award or something like that, you can't hear everything that the other station hears within the passband, and you've got to get creative and a little, let's just say you've got to show some tenacity to be able to make that contact. This is not something that's fully automated. You turn on the computer, you walk away and you leave it. Now, there are people that have created FT8 robots. And I will tell you that my experience is there's not many of them. The ones that do it are known, and they're not appreciated by the community, and they know that. So, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. So I don't view FT8 and FT4 as being the the proverbial death of ham radio. What I will tell you is when I hear of a guy like AA3B, who, if you go and take a look, I mean, this guy is a huge contester with FRC. He's a fantastic operator. He's a great guy. I think he posted maybe last winter that he had finally worked JA on 160 and he did it on FT8. So do I begrudge him that he worked Japan? I think it was Japan on 160 because he used a digital mode like FT8 instead of RTTY. Oh, by the way, your brain doesn't decode RTTY. But RTTY apparently is not the death of ham radio, but FT8 is. So that's the way that I look at it is, I said this the other night, it's a little bit like a Chinese buffet. I kind of like everything on the buffet, but I'm certainly not going to be critical of somebody that doesn't like something that I do, or vice versa. So,
okay. Let me first ask Nomar if he's still around. Well, he should.
I'm here, Ria.
Yeah, Nomar. So how are we doing on time? How long you want us to run? We have, and before I queue up the next few questions.
Okay, why don't we're at 8:34 now. Why don't we look to say, I guess between David as well, I think around 8:45, right around in there, right?
David, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I cannot say this enough. Now, let me just briefly touch on this before we move off of this FT8 question. What about those who make contacts without actually being there, i.e. letting the computer make contacts? What's being done to police such activity? Well, Fred and Judith, who asked that question, that's already been addressed in that, there are few, they are known, and they're not well tolerated in the community. So that one's being taken care of. There are, one of them is kudos to the lab, W1RFI, and Paul, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Paul Cianciolo, the W1VLF, right? Who helped me maybe those on conference should be aware of the support of the ARRL, AC2ZU. I do agree the lab, the Technical Information Service, is probably one of the best benefits that the ARRL offers. And actually, I learned fully about the TIS at a FLARC meeting. Will the ARRL get involved in launching satellites in the future?
Well, let me tell you something, okay? I am a staunch, outspoken, it's both proponent and critic at the same time. You know, we as a community, after AO40 exploded in space, you know, we have really sat back and focused on putting up LEOs. And it drove me nuts like no other to watch Elon Musk take a red sports car with an astronaut dummy and some David Bowie music and shoot that thing out into space at Mars. You know, we should have put an AO40 class satellite in the passenger seat and let him do a James Bond as he passed through where it needed to be delivered. You know, I don't think that the league has the resources to be able to do that. It's not necessarily what our mission is. It is the mission of AMSAT. You know, I've been an enthusiastic supporter of AMSAT for at least since the 1980s. When I first got into satellite, when it was operating RS 1011 and then 1213. So I don't know that we could ever do that, but I will tell you that there are organizations that are closely associated with amateur radio that if they decided that they wanted to commit the resources to putting up either a geostationary satellite over North America or a high Earth orbiting satellite for North American and South American radio amateurs, they certainly could. And I would love to see that.
Okay. The one more, and yeah, I'll ask you probably a couple more, but this is a real interesting one. I know we got a take from David Siddall. Maybe I could ask David if he'll join one of these meetings, but he might just say, well, he's a little too shy. What is your take on the departure of Chairman Ajit Pai? Now, I must tell you that Ajit Pai is very colorful on Twitter. I tweet at him and he tweets back at me sometimes, which is funny. You have to watch his Good Night Boys and Girls. He always posts something horrific before he goes to bed. What do you think about Ajit Pai's departure from the FCC?
Well, you know, I don't have a particular point of view on that other than, you know, I think he's someone who broadly supported amateur radio. And when things came to him, he was receptive in hearing about it. I don't know what the change in leadership there is going to mean for us at ARRL. And you know, we'll have to see how that goes.
All right. Well, Charlie NC3CRT, thank you, Laura, for letting David stay out late to play again.
That's right.
She's the boss. If the HF frequencies are important to amateur radio's future, maybe the ARRL should examine their continued promotion of modes that reduce HF, such as Echolink. Echolink has an average of 9,000 users on 24 hours a day. That's non-HF use. So I will say, that I'll put my opinion, and then David could answer this. I don't think Echolink is putting a serious dent into HF at all, because Echolink serves a different type of user of an amateur radio spectrum. I find that on HF, I get on Echolink. I get on it for a specific reason, to get on nets and communicate with my friends in Trinidad. The reason I get on HF is to work DX, play in the contest, and meet my friends on HF. So I don't think that's really going to affect one or the other. So I don't think it's going to put a significant dent. And I do think that this sort of fusion between the internet and ham radio is not going to be detrimental toward the hobby. What do you say, David?
Well, I agree with you. And, you know, a personal experience that I had, again, was down on Bonaire. We had a group of Italian radio amateurs that came down to contest with us. And one of the guys opened his case and pulled out this little white box and plugged it in the wall and pulls out an HT and is sitting there rolling with laughter, talking to all these Italian guys back in Sicily. And when he got off, I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, it's a hotspot. And, I use this little radio and, rather than having to be by the repeater in Sicily, I just go through the internet." Yeah, again, it's one of those things where if somebody says to me, "Well, that's not real ham radio." Well, it was a real ham. He had a real radio in his hand and he was talking to his friends back in Sicily. Yeah, it may not have been through, RF directly. But certainly everybody was using amateur radio to talk to each other. So I don't personally don't see why that's a problem.
Okay. All right. So it's getting on 8:42. Nomar or Ed, what do you want to do now?
Nomar, anything on your end there?
Not really, other than wishing everybody a happy holiday season and thanking them for being here and for providing us with, wow, a great attendance that we have not had, I would say, since we've been doing these Zoom meetings. So thank you very much to everybody and for being a part of this. And we hope it's not the last time.
All right. There is one late straggling question, but I guess you can answer it offline. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, David, on behalf of FLARC, welcome home. Okay, we're really glad that you were able to make the time to join us tonight. To all our guests tonight, welcome to FLARC, and join us again soon. Actually, our next Zoom meeting is on January 15th, where we're going to have Lauren Libby, W0LD, who's the CEO of Transworld Radio, speaking to us as part of our radio monitoring special interest group.
Who, by the way, is the largest consumer of electricity on the island of Bonaire.
That's correct. I've heard that. I've heard that. So
Well,
yes, we'll be paying part of the light bill, I would think. So
Yeah.
Anyway, Rhea, thanks as well. Okay, for all your help and assistance. Obviously, this has been a really good show. And let me just back up Nomar to say happy holidays to everybody. And Rhea, I'll just leave it to you for the last word. 73s, everybody.
All right. Well, couple of announcements before I go. First of all, I'd like to thank David very, very much. I could tell you that this is a huge thing he's done for us because I know for a fact he is busy. Trust me when I say he is busy. He is. I don't know how he does it. I'm astonished, but I'm really glad that he took time out to come and talk to the membership. And I think it's important that he keeps talking to the membership. Feel free to email him, CEO@ARRL.org, with your questions directly. And, be nice, but don't be afraid, right? You can also email me at n2rj@ARRL.org. You could find me on Twitter @RiaJairam. I'll put the links in here. And I'm also on Facebook, but although I'm kind of redoing my Facebook, but there is a Facebook @ARRL Hudson, where you can get the all the latest division stuff. If you're not an ARRL member, why don't you join? There's a lot of good benefits, and the league is only going to be growing from now. And if you are a member of the league, go in your member profile on the league website and subscribe to our emails. We don't send a lot of email, but I send out messages every now and again. And there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up. I'd also like to tell you, look on the Fairlawn Amateur Radio Club YouTube channel. They have a lot of stuff going on. They archive all these talks. I'm going to be giving Tom a copy of this video to do an edited version of this talk, although the full live version will be up on the ARRL Hudson Division channel, youtube.com/ARRL Hudson. I post on my channel. You could look me up on YouTube as well. I try to post like twice a week, but anyway, happy holidays, be good, and 73 all. Thank you very much, FLARC.